All right. Oh, no. For some reason, I'm stuck here. That's me. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Hopefully, I don't know what's going on. Having large scale tech issues today, and I apologize. Um, just to start the day off, right? Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. What's going on, guys? Early chatters are in. We are live on, well, we were live on Rockfin. We are live on Rockfin. Greetings, Urban Hermit is here. Please come watch us and chat with us on Rockfin. ROKFIN.com. All right. So, yeah, it took me a while to get live. And hope you all enjoyed the day without Black Bear News. The day without Black Bear News, otherwise known as Christmas. Yeah, I'm just apologizing in advance for technical issues. I see that the app that I'm streaming to Rockfin on is being very wonky, and it's like super slow, and I don't know what's going on. Anyways, yeah, and I made this whole video for today's presentation, and then I couldn't download the video. Whatever, YouTube or Google or Google Drive or Firefox or whoever just would not let me download this video that I made today. Refused. Anyways, so that's enough of that. But anyways, I did make the video and I was able to upload it to my drive. And I think that I can do what I wanted to do from my drive. So that's what I'm going to do. So anyways, a few people have been asking me over the last few months or year even. And I have... I've kind of briefly covered this before. Walter Jehne, a long time ago, maybe about a year ago, I probably briefly covered the Walter Jehne idea. And we have, we've talked here and there briefly. Realize says the whole world is having a large-scale tech issue called the sixth mass extinction and the climate catastrophe tech issues. Indeed. Yeah. Anyways, I've covered this idea of Walter Jehne of basically restarting or rehabilitating the hydrological cycles of the planet in order to fight climate change. And it does two things at the same time. All right, we got more people on Rockfin. Sorry, Ken Greenfield, Kevin Shanholzer, Urban Hermit, Poppy Davis are all hanging out on Rockfin in the Cool Kids Club. The idea from Walter Jehne, hailing from Australia, is to restart the hydrological cycle in order to do two things: capture carbon and keep temperatures down. And so what I wanted to do today was not go through the entire idea, but just kind of give you a brief introduction to it and just kind of get into it and get into a little bit of a discussion around it. I like the idea, but I'm going to play the video first and kind of talk through the video, and then I'll give you my negatives, my cons afterwards. So anyways, let's look at kind of chopped up a Walter Jehne video just to give you guys a brief overview of what's going on with Walter Jehne, his idea of rehabilitating or restarting the hydrological cycle of the planet, or not restarting, but using the hydrological cycles of the planet to draw down carbon and keep the planet cool. And yes, this also, on some level, addresses, you know, the factor of global dimming, right? So if it can be implemented quickly enough and correctly enough, it would mitigate somewhat the factor of global dimming. But again, there's a big old fat if in here. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and play this. Hopefully you guys can hear this.
Flour, and we're gonna pretend that those flour particles are the sand, silt, and clay broken down rock particles that make up the substrate of soil. It's just the mineral substrate of soil. And when they don't have any biology in them, they have no relationship to each other in terms of how they fit together. They're just a pile of loose material. And if you poke a hole in a paper cup and try raining on that kind of soil, which is what soil reverts back to when it's degraded by poor management decisions, then what happens there? And some of you have seen this exercise before, but what's happening around the edge of the plate is a flood. What's happening in the center is that the soil is running off. Anyone who's made bread knows what that's like when you pour the water on the flour. So you have a drought and flooding in the same landscape. You put that out into the sun in Africa, and you've got a baked-on surface that rain can't infiltrate into, and then you have even more drought and flooding because the water, instead of moving down, is moving sideways.
Right. So this is a little pre-demonstration from the woman who is bringing Walter Jehne on, and she's just describing, kind of in a very simplistic, maybe something that might be understood in an elementary science class, but she's likening dead soil or mismanaged soil, desertification, etc. Loose soil with no biology going on, as this is the desert. When you get rain in the desert, you get floods, but it's not absorbing the water, and obviously the bread, which has biology, would. Okay, so going on.
If you have chemicals in the landscape, they're ending up in the waterways, and the aquifers aren't refilling. So what do we need to add to flour to turn it into a sponge, into bread? Biology. Thank you. Microorganisms. So same is true for soils, and those microorganisms take those individual particles and knit them together into a very porous, absorbent matrix. And it's So underneath, these are like big cookie cutters that have been cut out sections of soil, and underneath they're empty, open. So you'll see there are jars in the back, and on the far right, the jar in the back is empty. So they've put 4 inches of rain, like with a big shower head, over these trays. And on 3 inches of soil, nothing has gone through. And if you flip that pan over, a big cloud of dust comes up, which is what the people who run these shows call the oh shit moment. Because all of the farmers standing around who've been taught that when rain is coming, you need to till and open up the soil, realize that they've been taught wrong.
Okay, so, and she makes a good point there about tilling the soil, that it's, conventional wisdom that tilling the soil is good for the soil or absorbs water. And she's saying, no, that's wrong. Anyways, this is just again, another very simple overview of, land that has a lot of growth going on and has a good hydrological cycle, is able to absorb the water. And then there's varying degrees of, land degradation down to the bottom, which doesn't absorb much water at all. So let's move on to Walter. Jehne is just going to give you some introduction to himself and to his idea and talk about climate change a little bit.
I'm really a soil microbiologist from down under. Most of my time I spend just quietly underground, just doing work there. But no, very interesting things. I'm working with a little group called Healthy Soils Australia in Australia. They're groups of farmers, very, very innovative farmers, all different industries, all different regions. We've got about 1,000 farmers involved in this in Australia, but they're really leading some very, very clever solutions, both regenerating the land, but then coming into rehydrating arid landscapes, and of course, naturally, safely cooling those regions in the planet. So I wanted to sort of share all that experience, but also what's happening globally in a bigger level with you.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second, guys. Like, my drive, Google Drive, is just being very lame right now. Oh, and you guys weren't, hopefully you were seeing all that on Rockfin. This has been very infuriating because I have this whole thing I wanted to do today, and Google Drive is just not helping me.
Take a plate of flour.
Anyways.
And
We'll get back there. Hold on. Here we go. All right. Apologies.
Soil microbiologist from down under. Most of my time I spend just quietly underground, just doing work there. But no, very interesting things. I'm working with a little group called Healthy Soils Australia in Australia. They're groups of farmers, very, very innovative farmers, all different industries, all different regions. We've got about 1,000 farmers involved in this in Australia, but they're really leading some very, very clever solutions, both regenerating the land, but then coming into rehydrating arid landscapes, and of course, naturally, safely cooling those regions in the planet. So I wanted to sort of share all that experience, but also what's happening globally in a bigger level with you, and really come to the topic of today, new climate solutions. A bit of a pun on solutions. Because we're going to be talking about hydrology.
Okay. Hold on. Damn you, Google.
And basically how 95...
Holy shit. Sorry, guys. This is really just screwing up my whole day. Google Drive just being a big piece of shit right now. Hold on. Everything being
of the heat dynamics of the blue...
Here we go. So great. Hold on, guys. See if I can get this to work. Give me 2 minutes.
take a plate of flour, and we're going to pretend that those flour particles
Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to see if I can continue this presentation. I don't know. This is just so weird. Like Google just refused to download this video. I was trying to download this video. It's not, you know, like it's a gig. It's not like anything crazy. And they refused to download it. I tried several different ways, and then now they're just not. Now they just won't let me play it. Raza says I'm Australian. Okay, good for you, Raza. All right. Well, you know what? This is just not going to work today. And I apologize, guys. You know what? I'm just going to have to come back tomorrow and do this and figure out what's going on. It took me hours to try to get this video to like download that, you know, whatever. I worked very, very hard to try and get this video made for you guys today. And then it just didn't like obey. It just didn't want to work out for me. I don't know why. I'm not sure why. I apologize. And of course, all my live streaming things are not working out very well today either. So I don't know really what to do. Give me a second while I...
Reason.
Oh, maybe we can do this. Hold on. Oh, Lordy. Still with me? Are you still with me? Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go back and let's see if we can get this. All right. Let's try one more time, guys. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here we are. Take it away one more time, Walter Jehne.
And of course, naturally, safely cooling those regions in the planet. 1,000 farmers involved in this in Australia, but they're really leading some very, very clever solutions, both regenerating the land, but then coming into rehydrating arid landscapes, and of course, naturally, safely cooling those regions in the planet. So I wanted to sort of share all that experience, but also what's happening globally in a bigger level with you, and really come to the topic of today, you know, new climate solutions. A bit of a pun on solutions, because we're going to be talking about hydrology and basically how 95% of the heat dynamics of the blue planet is governed, in a sense, by water. And in a sense, it's a process and a whole influence that we've, in a sense, ignored in the last 60 years with this climate debate, because we were so focused on the CO2 rise and the symptoms of that. And of course, what do we do to address the CO2? And in a sense, water is just the key process that naturally drives the hydrology, drives the heat dynamics of this planet. And really the question is, can we actually look at those processes and see if they are part of the solution? But they define the thing very much on the basis of this CO2 effect. You know, they sort of said, okay, we've got this symptom, we've got this CO2 increase. Obviously it's abnormal. And so how do we look at the greenhouse effect of that CO2 rise? They were well aware, and climatology 101 right from the 40s, 50s, you know, was fairly cognizant, 95% of the heat dynamics of the blue planet is driven by water. But they basically excluded water from their analysis for two reasons. The first thing is, because water is so dominant, they assumed that, look, we humans could not possibly have influenced that aspect of the world's heat dynamics to have had this effect. And secondly, because water, again, is so extremely variable in time and space, location and seasons, it's impossible to model mathematically in the reference that the president had given them. I'm
going to stop right there. So he brings up something very interesting, right, in the fact that everything dealing with climate change is built around CO2, and we know that in the IPCC report they left out methane as a factor, and I think I was talking with Jim Massa the other day, or when we were talking the other day. There's water vapor is also another factor that they're kind of leaving out of these models. So he's basically saying the hydrological cycle, that hydrology of the planet is a gigantic factor that they're not really even addressing, along with all the CO2 modeling. Anyways, let's go on.
Can you mathematically model and define scenarios and consequences, what will happen? The point is that they basically focused on that CO2 component of the greenhouse effect.
Hold on. Hold on. And I want to just very quickly say, Andy the Gardener says, another idiot who thinks we must find a tech solution to global warming. This isn't a tech solution. That's what's different about this, and I will talk a little bit about this when we're done watching this. But this is different from a tech solution. This is a solution, right? So if you whether you feel like solutions are a good thing or a bad thing, but this is a solution that is not necessarily relying on tech. Let's keep going.
Assuming that was the key problem, and that's what we were having to address. As I said, it's so variable in time and space. It goes in diurnally, every square meter, every forest or grassland or concrete urban area. It is just so variable, dynamic, it's almost impossible to model, right? And clouds, we'll come to clouds because they're part of the solution we'll be talking about. Okay, but I'm just setting the scene because the reference, the context in which the analysis being built from 40 years ago was looking at the CO2 greenhouse effect. And the point I'm trying to make is that we're just really looking at a small part of the global heat dynamics, and the elephants that we haven't looked at aren't in the room. They're far too big to be in the room. They're still outside. Okay? These 95% of the global heat dynamics driven by hydrological processes have never been seriously considered.
So he's talking about water vapor. He's talking about everything involved with water on the planet and how that's driving climate change as well as CO2. Obviously, they're hand in hand. They're working tandemly, or in tandem, if you will. But we'll go on.
They basically then came, Manabe, Weatherald in the 70s, basically took the reference, and they came up with a curve. Basically, yes, we increase the CO2. Yes, we can get an increase in temperature. But just like Cervantes Arrhenius in 1896, when he'd done those calculations initially, the CO2 rise was relatively modest, about 0.2 of a degree centigrade from doubling CO2. So they integrated a water vapor feedback effect as part of their modeling process. Basically was...
And there you go, right? The water vapor is something that's adding more warming on top of CO2, right? More warming on top of warming. Warming on top of warming. But we'll go on.
Was formed and took on a global reference to say, look, we must prevent dangerous climate change happening. And all nations, in words, committed themselves to it. And out of that, they formed the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And for the last 40 years, those scientists working in the IPCC have been basically, again, doing this sort of analysis, looking what are the consequences, the impacts, the scenarios from this rising CO2 increase, but very much focused on the CO2, leaving aside a lot of the hydrological and other factors. Again, too complex and too difficult to model. Okay, so we, for the last 40 years, have looked at this problem from very much that CO2 angle. And so when we're talking about new solutions in climate, we're really sort of saying, okay, can we step outside with the elephants and start asking questions from the other perspective? Because 10 years ago, or actually no, 2005, so that's now 13 years ago, Joachim Schellenhuber and a whole group meeting at the Hadley Centre sort of really did a new analysis and said, look, it's not just the CO2 rise that's the problem, it's actually the dangerous extremes in climate that are already accelerating and happening well in advance of the 2,100 scenarios that this IPCC analysis had sort of given warnings about. And these extremes were actually already impacting seriously on populations, food productions. And they're quite severe. I mean, and we've talked about them, the hurricanes, the increased storms, whether it's Irene, Sandy, what have you, the flooding and the damage, as Didi has sort of shown all over the world from that, but also the droughts that are as a consequence of that, the aridification, the systemic aridifications of large regions, the increased wildfires, and of course things like sea level rise.
All right, so
and the point about all of
he's just pointing out, of course, that climate change is already driving a lot of extreme weather events, and it's continuing apace, is what I'm trying to say. And so he's pointing out that we're already far down the road.
Those factors, all of those impacts, they are all hydrological. They're all driven by actually water, either the excess or the absence of it, triggering things like fires, droughts. And it's these extremes that become then the really dangerous consequences. And in a sense, that's the world we're now facing, intensifying dangerous climate extremes, and the issue, what can we do about it? Now finally in 2015, after lots of political work and false starts with Kyoto and what have you, the IPCC, Christina Figueres in Paris, was able to pull down a general agreement to say, look, let us all agree to try to achieve zero net carbon emissions. Zero net carbon emissions. So in the Keeling curve, they're saying, okay, can we actually try to get back to neutrality where our emissions and our drawdown of carbon, in a sense, offset each other, and we end up with a near zero net. And that's very laudable, and of course, to do that, there's been a big agreement, a move. How do we increase the drawdown of carbon back into the by the biosystem, back into soils, and carbon sinks? And of course, yes, we have to do that. Of course, we have to continue to try to reduce, I'm drawing the arrows the other way, we're trying to reduce the amount of emissions, and definitely that has to continue. Nobody is for a minute suggesting we don't have to reduce our emissions.
Right, so he's bringing up the idea of net zero, but what, and the idea that we have to reduce our emissions and somehow draw down the emissions that we have already put into the atmosphere. So, all of this is all, he's just explaining reality. He's just explaining the reality of the situation.
But the power is, can we actually accelerate that drawdown of carbon back into the biosystems? Every year, some 120 billion tons of carbon is drawn down by green plants back into the biosystem. But it's not good enough, because every year 130 billion tons of carbon is actually emitted, which is where we get this 10 billion tons of carbon deficit. But we can increase this because at the moment the residual biosystem that we have, the land surface still covered by green photosynthetic vegetation, is perhaps half of what it was 8,000, 10,000 years ago.
It's half. And here we get into the problems with this, of course, but if we can, he's saying if we can work with the remaining half of what we had in the past, that we might be able to overcome this deficit, this carbon deficit of 10 billion tons a year. Okay, here we go.
Okay, again, there's all the data, the numbers, we can go through them, but basically UNEP very clearly defined, yes, we have done so much degradation of forest, of grasslands, we've created 5 billion hectares of man-made desert and wasteland over that 8,000 years. And the issue is, can we increase the drawdown of carbon by regenerating that biosystem? And so what we're talking about is, yes, how do we do that? How do we enhance that? While this might be able to sort of slow down the emissions of CO2 and flatline them, well, we're up here now, of course, it won't bring that CO2 down. To bring the CO2 back down, we not just have to do 10 billion tons to offset our current net emissions, we might have to do another 10 billion tons per annum to actually draw back heritage legacy emissions that we've basically emitted previously. So the target might even be bigger. It might be 20 billion tons of carbon per annum. And the good news is, yes, we can do that. We can do that through land regeneration by extending the area, the productivity, but particularly the longevity of green growth. Okay?
So he's talking about, when he says green growth, he's talking about actual green growth, right? Actual, plants, living things, living matter, organisms. He's talking about the actual green growth. So not the green growth that's being promoted by the new Green Deal or being promoted by venture capitalists in, green renewables. When they say green growth, generally that's what they mean is like green growth as in the economy is growing and we're going to make it green, quote unquote. But he's talking about actual green growth. So this is something that can be supported, right? This is something, personally, this is something I can get behind. I agree with this. I'm into this. I hope we can do more of this. Again, I'll just let this finish and I'll talk a little bit about it.
But none of this is possible, and this is the key point, none of this is possible unless these biosystems have water. Okay? Because for these biosystems to fix carbon, to draw down carbon, they need water. And that water can only come from the soils. So the whole take-home message from can we draw down, can we try to balance this, is we must regenerate the Earth's soil carbon sponge, because only that water can enable this drawdown to operate. Okay, so that's really important. That sponge is fundamental to that whole photosynthetic potential being realized.
Okay, so that is basically
Take a plate of flour.
what that's an introduction to Walter Jehne. And tomorrow, hopefully, I will bring you back a deeper dive into how he proposes to do this. So I'm sorry it was so rocky initially. Hopefully tomorrow it'll go a little smoother. And for my people on Rockfin, I know the video is really bad. For whatever reason, the app that is running the Rockfin stream is not very strong. But anyways, I see you guys there on Rockfin. Thank you for hanging out on Rockfin. I appreciate it. YouTube is a little bit stronger of a stream. Anyways, so I like this idea. I feel like if there's, I'm going to put on my in an alternate universe cap right? I'm not, again, depending on, depending on how well you listen to my channel or how well you listen to the things that I say, I'm clearly understanding of the situation that we're in. I'm clearly understanding of the reality that turning the ship around is an incredibly, insanely gigantic task as far as trying to not destroy the planet and destroy ourselves in the process. And we are not doing a very good job of turning the ship around. But I'm, wearing my alternate universe hat in an alternate universe where we all, wake up and become suddenly very self-aware, and we also are capable of, overthrowing or overturning, all the governments of the planet who now control the entire economy of the planet, removing the people that are standing in the way of actually doing something of significance towards solving climate change, right? Again, wearing my alternate universe hat. This would be the way to go. This would be the thing to put into practice. This would be the way to draw down carbon. Again, he also, Walter Jehne admitted and said in the middle of that speech, if you heard, he said, obviously we need to stop emitting the carbon that we're emitting. So that's the only way that's really going to work. This idea is not going to work unless we stop emitting the carbon that we're already emitting. If we don't stop doing that, if we don't change society on a major level, the way the society is run and the things that we are doing to the planet, if we don't stop doing those things, there's no point in entertaining this idea, right? However, again, wearing my alternate universe hat, if there was going to be an awakening or a change, a revolution in how human beings existed on this planet, it would be really good to start this process now, right? Starting this process now would be a really good thing, so that if there was a shift in awareness or consciousness, these things would already be taking place. People would already be, these systems would already be going, and people would be able to implement them at scale. That would be the ideal path to take forward. Which is why I'm drawing attention to this. This is why I'm talking about this. I think this is a good idea. If we're going to do anything, if there's going to be any kind of net zero, talk of net zero, or talk of, a future in which humans change the course of history, it would involve something like this. It would involve implementing this planet-wide. Again, industrial society or industrial civilization, most of that would have to go. Our consumer culture would have to go. The way we live would have to go. We'd have to live extremely regionally, extremely locally. There would be no shipping, no air flight, no, et cetera, et cetera. We'd have to do away with 90% of the things that we use in our current culture. And we'd have to be okay with that too, right? So, if you don't want to live in a totalitarian state where the governments of the world impose that lifestyle on you, you're going to have to actually accept that you're going to have to live that way all on your own. So therein lies the awakening part of that, or the psychic revolution, or the intellectual revolution that's going to have to take place before any of this even happens. So again, I'm seeing that being an extreme long shot. And I understand all that. So I'm not putting this forward as putting this forward as another dose of hopium for the masses. I'm just saying, if we're going to go forward in a realistic way, this would be one of the things that we would utilize and would have to utilize in order to draw down the carbon we have already put into the atmosphere, in order to keep temperatures low enough etc., etc., etc. But I do want to get into a deeper dive of what Walter Jehne is talking about. Tomorrow, I will get a little deeper into his ideas about how we do that, and I will bring back some more video of Walter Jehne speaking on the subject, and hopefully that will be a little bit smoother tomorrow. John Allen says, stop all militaries. I agree. Kuro Hike says, doing all the things you can do might not save us, but it does save your integrity and dignity and honor. Ding, ding, ding. So, right, even if you think that none of these things will work, even if you think that we're doomed, even if you think we're done for, even if you think there's no way to turn this around, that doesn't stop you from doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is very honorable. It's not foolish. It's not stupid. It's not lying. It's not hopium. It's not any of those things. It's very, very honorable to just do those things anyways, even if you know the reality is very different, right? Or even if you know the likelihood of it not working out, all not working out. Doing those things is an extremely honorable way to live, and I highly encourage it. Indeed, Kuro. Spot on. Anthony Davis says, one carbon footprint at a time every day is the way. Let's see. Sorry, just looking through the comments a little bit. I did get some super chats, and I saw them happening while I was playing Walter Jehne, and I apologize for missing them earlier. It's hard for me to go all the way back and see them. But thank you for the super chats to those who proffered some super chats. Kevin Shanholzer on Rockfin says, thank you for your efforts, Kevin. You will get it to work. Yes. Right. Yeah, I know the Rockfin feed is not great, and I apologize. So YouTube is fine. Hopefully we'll get it to going a little bit better tomorrow. Creative Experiment says, like McPherson said, even if we went down trying, it wouldn't be a bad way to go. I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. Do everything that you can. Do what little you can, even if what you can do is very little. Do a very little. Do the best that you can with the resources that you have, and possibly, maybe, we can turn that little bit of momentum into a snowball. Creative Experiments, as long as we keep Josh Fox away from us. Indeed. Josh Fox. Evil doer posing as good guy. Let's switch over, guys, to this is a few months old, November 2nd. But this is from this year, and this is from, basically this says, bad news for the Arctic. Russia's Laptev Sea, birthplace of ice, did not refreeze for the first time ever in October. So, hold on, let me make sure you can see this. Yeah. So yeah, let's show this.
Льда и снега. Сразу и не разберешь.
Hold on one second. Okay, here we go.
горы льда и снега. Сразу и не разберешь, где начинается небосклон. Так обычно выглядит море Лаптевых в конце октября. Но
If
это...
you can't see this is in Russian, of course, but if you can't see if you can't see the what are they called? The translations, the captions is saying this is how the Russian how the ice is supposed to look in October, right here.
Лаптевых в конце октября. Но эта осень стала исключением.
And this is how it
Вода
looks
до сих
now.
пор не замерзла. Она на целых
This is
5
how it looks
градусов
now.
теплее, чем
Or in
всегда.
October
А
of
ведь
this year.
раньше это море называли не иначе, как ледовитым.
Уже в прошлом году Северный Ледовитый океан в нашем секторе замерзал очень плохо, и это привело в итоге к тому, что отклонения площади летних льдов уже были очень сильные. В конце июня этого года площадь льда в море Лаптевых была на 100 тысяч квадратных километров или на 20% примерно. Меньше, чем минимальная за последние 30 лет.
А ведь еще недавно на берегах моря Лаптевых все было совсем по-другому.
9 месяцев в году, пока в Арктике царит зима, эти краны стоят без работы. Навигация длится всего 90 дней.
Это наши съемки 2016 года в поселке Тикси. Там мы на себе испытали, что это одно из самых суровых мест в нашей стране и на всей планете. С декабря по февраль средняя температура под 50 мороза, а, например, весной постоянные ветра с порывами за 30 метров в секунду.
Если, допустим, плохо, допустим, в метель лицо закрыл, там глаза те же, можно обморозить вот щеки. То есть, если вот, ну, обычно вот здесь вот места бывает, что обмораживаешь.
Побережье моря Лаптевых издавна населено эвенками, юкагирами и другими коренными народностями. Занимаются они в основном охотой и рыбалкой. Казаки, золотоискатели и зверопромышленники проникли в эти места 400 лет назад. С годами уже ученые поняли, именно на севере куется климат планеты.
Полынья запрепайная является фабрикой льдов для всего арктического бассейна. Здесь намерзает каждый день по 3, 4, 5 сантиметров молодого льда. И этот лед начинает дрейфовать с помощью течения в сторону Северного полюса.
Дрейфуя из моря Лаптевых, обычно этот лед распадается весной в проливе Фрам между Гренландией и Шпицбергеном. Если же лед будет образовываться позже, то будет тоньше и, скорее всего, растает до того, как доберется до этого пролива. Из-за этого планктон будет получать меньше питательных веществ, в результате чего снизится его способность поглощать углекислый газ, который называют главной причиной парникового эффекта и повышения температуры.
All right. And that concludes our broadcast of that video.
В Якутии
At least
это привело к
we're
тому,
gonna
что
try for that. Yeah, so that's a big problem. And I've been hearing this from many, many people who live in northern climes. In fact, I believe Montreal just had like a rainstorm. It's usually supposed to be this time of year in Montreal. There's a lot of snow and it's very, very cold. And it was in the 50s, I guess, mid 50s in Montreal yesterday. And they were having like a rainstorm, and that is not normal. That's not supposed to happen. That means things are out of whack. Lightning Rod, you're welcome, comrade. Yeah, so again, just for those who couldn't read the captions, there's supposed to be ice in the Laptev Sea in October. It's supposed to be frozen over. That area is supposed to be filled with ice and very little to no ice. Yeah. Things are very badly off the rails of the climate if you were paying attention. If you're not paying attention, everything's fine. Everything's fine. If you're not looking, you wouldn't see it. Oh, do you want the link? Constituent of clowns. Hold on one second. I'll give you the link. Let's see. Here it is. Yes, Anita M says, just watch Paul Beckwith's latest videos. It was raining in Ottawa too. Right. So it was actually quite warm, or warmer than normal, warmer than it should be at this time of year in parts of Maine and Canada. And people were remarking on how warm it was and how abnormal it was. Again, that points to the fact that our planet is not operating as it should be. All right. Scott Andrews, the jet streams are not streaming. Exactly. All right. Lastly, in this video, I'm going to go to just a little bit of political news. Quickly, I want to cover the story about the Iowa caucus and about the Democratic Party shenanigans in the Democratic Party. Hold 1 second. Let me make sure everything is here and here. This is a news article from February. The Iowa caucus wasn't rigged by an app to help Pete Buttigieg. Democracy is just messy. That's what they're saying. Oh, nothing to see here. Everything is fine. It's okay. Everything is fine. That so many prominent people amplified rank speculation in support of their candidate does not, however, bode well for the months ahead. Well, funny thing, here's an article from The Intercept that just came out. From Jordan Cheriton, December 23rd. Investigator says the DNC was directly involved in Iowa caucus app development, countering DNC denial. In a closed session, Iowa State Democrats meeting, members pushed for answers on the DNC's role in the caucus debacle. The Democratic National Committee refused to cooperate with investigators and was directly involved in the development process of the infamous shadow app ahead of the 2020 Iowa caucus. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing. Our elections are the most free and fair. There's nothing. Our elections are completely fair and totally free from any kind of finagling, right? That's what we're being told now. That's what we're being told right now. Let's see. That's the conclusion of the former U.S. attorney leading the investigation into what went wrong during the First in the Nation caucuses as relayed to the Iowa State Democratic Party in a closed session meeting last week, according to a transcript of the meeting obtained by The Intercept. The DNC was directly involved in the development process. Nicholas Kleinfeld, a former federal attorney appointed by President Barack Obama, told the Iowa Democratic Party State Steering Committee in the December 12th meeting about the findings of an investigation he had led alongside former Iowa Attorney General Bonnie Campbell. Kleinfeld's revelation about the committee's involvement counters the DNC's claim it made immediately after the Iowa caucuses. Back then, the DNC claimed it had absolutely no involvement in the development or coding of the shadow app, so they just lied, which was supposed to record and report caucus results. Also, if you do remember, Pete Buttigieg was a funder of the company that developed that app. Nothing to see here. When the 3rd District State Party member Kim Callahan asked investigators to expand on the DNC's involvement, they failed to elaborate, simply confirming that the DNC wouldn't cooperate with its investigation. Without the DNC's cooperation, excuse me, woohoo! Without the DNC's cooperation in the probe, investigators were hamstrung. There seemed to be a great deal of culpability by the DNC. Jim Bunton, a 3rd District Iowa State Party member, said to Kleinfeld in the meeting, "There doesn't seem to be a lot of cooperation from the DNC from what you're saying. How can we hope to have a better outcome next time around?" because the actor we can't control is the DNC. Again, there's just so much evidence that there was some kind of shady stuff going on in the Democratic primaries, and yet so many people are like, "Oh, I don't, no, that couldn't possibly have happened. No." But those Republicans, those damn Republicans, they're just so corrupt and they're so bad. And they are bad. I'm not saying that they aren't. They are bad, but they're not the only ones. In a closed session state party meeting, 3rd District State Party member Gabriel de la Cerda asked the attorneys leading an investigation if it was correct that the state party and Shadow App had the correct results on caucus night for the delegates won 26.2% for Pete Buttigieg and 26.1% for Bernie Sanders, and could have reported it if not for the DNC's demand not to. The DNC demanded not to report the results. Part of the delay was related to the party's promise to, for the first time, release popular vote totals, which proved more difficult than tabulating delegates. On election night, so basically what he's saying, the party officials knew what the vote count was, and the DNC refused to release the results that night. And they created kind of the chaos that went on for 5 days about, we don't know, we're still counting, we won't know for days. And what's interesting is that all of that language was repeated in the general election. I have mixed emotions about, everything that's going on in politics right now. But anyways, the same things were happening around a lot of the primary elections that took place, the Democratic primary elections that took place, and the general election. They were like, yeah, we're not going to know the totals for days, okay? So just sit tight while we figure out what's going on. Anyways, they knew what the results were. They refused to report them. Yeah. So, and I think anybody who was really looking at this, anybody who really took a long gander at the Iowa caucus situation and at some of the other primaries that were going on, anybody who really looked deeply at it was troubled. They were like, something is amiss, and something fishy in Denmark. And to piggyback on this is another report out of California. Someone filed a lawsuit around election tampering in the California primary, the California Democratic primary. And interesting turn in the case from December 18th, from Median. Breaking, California Superior Court orders Secretary of State Alex Padilla to preserve evidence in election fraud case. In a groundbreaking order issued by Honorable Judge Lori M. Earle on December 17th, 2020, the judge in the Raji Robb versus Secretary of State Alex Padilla et al. Election contest lawsuit has ordered the respondents, Alex Padilla, LARRCC Dean Logan, LA Board of Supervisors, to preserve all evidence until this case is finally resolved. And the case is centered around election tampering, the fact that someone or some entity accessed the vote count or vote totals 10 days prior to March 3rd, which was the primary election night. But they had been taking in ballots. There was early voting in California. This order means that Judge Earle is officially recognizing that there is evidence that must be preserved in the physical inspection request petitioner Raji Robb had asked for. Robb had not requested a motion for the order to preserve all evidence, but the judge made the order anyways. This is a huge step forward for Robb's case, as this is the farthest an election contest has ever moved in modern California history. Robb is very close to receiving an inspection of the internal logs that would show the exact time the vote count was accessed. For those who may not have been following Raji Rob's election contest, it has now been over 8 months since Rob has filed a lawsuit alleging election malconduct due to the fraudulent access of vote count 10 days prior to March 3rd, 2020 primary election night, 8 p.m. in Los Angeles, California, when vote by mail ballots were scanned into cast vote records and made instantly accessible. So what a lot of people are concerned about is election integrity and the fact that, you know, trying to get something done electorally is next to impossible if election integrity is not taken into account, if election integrity is not something that people are highly concerned about, and if election integrity is something that people are not concerned about only when it's their candidates involved, or when it's their side that's involved in possible election fraud, but they're only concerned about it when the other side is doing it. So it's actually a bigger problem than a lot of people are aware of. It's a bigger problem than a lot of people take into account. It's a bigger problem than people would like to be aware of, right? Because everybody wants to think that our elections are the best ever. We're free. Democracy is, the best in the United States of America. And that's not necessarily the case. That's not true. And obviously, a lot of politicians are not really concerned about election integrity because they wouldn't if they wouldn't benefit from fraudulent elections if things were run on a more up and up standard, right? So this is a huge concern. Tulsi Gabbard has been concerned about this, has introduced bills into the House investigating and also, trying to firm up or shore up election integrity. But Congress-wide or government-wide, it's not necessarily a thing that a lot of politicians are concerned about or involved with. But a lot of citizens are, and it's something that's receiving a little more notice as time goes on. It's something that's receiving a little more attention, and I hope that it receives even more attention from both sides, from Republicans and Democrats, from people and third-party people as well. This is a concerning issue. And anyways, we'll be following these stories as they progress. I just wanted to bring these to you. Robert Araujo says, watch the debates with Biden. Bernie was threatened. Who knows? Who knows? Scott Andrews says, America has become one big grift. Right. ERC1, election integrity equals status quo guaranteed. Okay. Right. Well, and the thing is that we really can't get anything done. We can't change anything. Certainly not on climate change. We can't even really have a real discussion around the most important issue, which is climate change, until we get rid of the influence of the money changers, the corporations, the oligarchs, the people that own both political parties. Until we get rid of that entire influence, the corrupt influence on all of our systems, our election systems as well. Until we get rid of that, we're really not capable of having a real conversation about anything, especially climate change, or changing anything, especially climate change, or fixing anything, especially climate change. So I'm all for people having more discussions around this and more awareness and more knowledge around this, and being concerned about this. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It is the right thing to do. Grateful Dan says politicians on the right and left are just as sociopathic and greedy as the U.S. electorate. Indeed. John Allen, it's always been a gig grift by the capitalists. Indeed. Yeah, unfortunately, to really oppose the status quo, to really oppose the people in power, to really oppose the powers that be, means to run afoul of almost every entity that makes up that power, that block of power, right? Which the intelligence communities, the mainstream media, the political parties, all of them create this, solid block of power, and woe be unto thee, woe be unto anyone who really challenges that power. Malachi O'Brien, yes, I will check my email. Okay, thank you. All right, guys, that about wraps it up for me. I appreciate your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I will be back tomorrow at the regular time, I think. I'll be back tomorrow at the regular time of 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be bringing back some more from Walter Jehne on restarting the hydrological cycle, and hopefully it will go a little bit smoother, or hopefully I can get a video downloaded so that I won't have so many issues. But thank you for hanging out with me as you do every single day. Until next time, peace.